Hello, gamers. So, Nefer and Llama are having their first rerun banners together this time, and I thought I would do a quick build guide and banner overview for people who want to pull Nefer. So, I already filmed this video yesterday, but I didn't like how it turned out, so I'm trying a different format to see if I like it better. So we'll see if this video actually makes it to YouTube. Please let me know if you like this format or not, so just let me know. Anyway, so let's talk about our banner. So the 4 stars we have are Yehoda, Xingqiu, and Kirara. To be honest, this banner isn't too bad. Yehoda is actually quite good, especially at C6. She's one of the better sustain options in Nefer teams. You'll quickly find out that Nefer really has problems with finding good sustain units in her teams, and Yehoda is pretty decent. Because not only does Yehoda provide an EM buff in her base kit, so you don't need constellations for the EM buff, she also provides healing. So in at C6, she provides some crit value. It really makes her a pretty good sustain option in the last slot. Xingqiu is an interesting one. I've definitely used Xingqiu before on Nefer teams. The only weird thing about him is that his cooldowns are so long that you have to alternate rotations between using skill and burst. So that can feel really bad and really weird sometimes, but he's also kind of a pseudo defensive option as well. He has some damage reduction and some healing. So Xingqiu is definitely not bad. And Kirara is probably the worst defensive option here. While she is like a Dendro shielder, I don't think Kirara is really that strong on effort teams. But overall, it's quite decent. These 4 stars you can definitely make work. So for the weapon banner, both of these 5-star weapons are actually really good on Nefer. Her Sig is obviously her best in slot, and her next best weapon is actually Llama's weapon. So both of these are actually incredible. And on top of that, you have Fav Lance, Fav Bow, Sack Sword, Rain Slasher, and Dawning Frost, which is a pretty good lineup. I'm not sure about Rain Slasher these days, and Sack Sword is kind of only good on in very niche scenarios, but Fav Bow obviously very good. Fav Lance is very good. And then there's Dawning Frost, which, you know, if you don't end up getting one of these rate up 5 stars, hopefully you at least get some copies of Dawning Frost, because I think it becomes better than Black Marrow Lantern at R2, I want to say. I might be not remembering that correctly, but I think once you get at least 2 copies of Dawning Frost, it becomes better than your other 4-star options available to you. So Nefer is an on-field Lunar Bloom DPS that scales off of EM, and most of her damage comes from her charge attacks, and some people like the charge attack playstyle, some people don't, so just keep that in mind. Her damage is also reliant on the Verdant Dew mechanic, which requires reactions to be triggered. This is important to know because if you're fighting an enemy that, say, has an innate pyro aura, you won't be able to trigger Lunar Bloom off of them, and you won't be able to do any damage with Nefer at all. She has some skill expression with dash cancels, which is really nice. If you perform the dash cancels well enough, you can increase your DPS, and she is pretty reliant on 5-star supports, kind of similar to Skirk. Obviously, the details are a little bit different, but it's kind of the same way where, you know, Skirk wants Rina and Escoffier. Nefer is a similar way where she kind of wants Llama and also Columbina. So how does she work? Well, when you use your skill, you activate your special stance. And in this stance, you can use 3 enhanced charge attacks. You get 2 charges of this skill, so you can do 6 charge attacks in a rotation. And when you first use your skill, you'll notice that the normal dendro cores on the ground that you just, you know, generate during your setup, they turn into special cores that only Nefer can use. She absorbs these when she does a charge attack, and she gets an elemental mastery buff, and these special cores are anti-synergy with other bloom reactions. So these cores can't be burgeoned or hyperbloomed. Or her talent priority, you want to prioritize level 90 and the skill. That's the absolutely most important thing to do. Level 90 is obviously very important because how, like, defense is calculated and the enemy's level matters and your level matters, and on top of that she also uses reactions which scale with your level, and of course her skill is like her special stance, so that's where all the damage is coming from. Her burst is pretty alright. You only really use it if you don't have anything else to do. and you have time to kill in her rotations, and her normal attacks are completely useless, so you can just ignore them. Now, even though I'm mostly a free-to-play player and I only really like to talk about free-to-play stuff, I did take a look at her constellations. C1 to C3 are all really great buffs to her charge attacks, so I'm sure getting any one of those will be a significant increase, although I'm pretty sure getting her signature is probably better first. I think C4 is pretty bad because it solves a non-existent issue if you have Columbina. Her C4 makes your Verdant Dew generate faster, which that is just not a problem at all if you have Columbina. Her C4 also has some Dendro Res Shred, which is also not very good because you're getting Dendro Res Shred from a lot of other sources on the team, like Llama's skill and Deepwood Memories. I think her C5 is just straight up bad. It just adds level to the burst. Her burst isn't good anyways. However, her C6 is absolutely nuts. It's like one of the best C6s you can get. It adds 2 extra hits of Lunar Bloom damage and also elevates Lunar Bloom damage by 15%, so it's really good. As for her artifacts, there's nothing else to consider other than Night of the Skies Unveiling. This is kind of the only 4-piece set that's good on her. 2-piece EM is significantly worse, but it's obviously going to be your best option until you get 4-piece. Her main stats are going to be crit EM. Do not use Dendro Damage Goblet. She scales with EM and she does all reaction damage and almost 0 Dendro damage. So Dendro Damage Goblet actually isn't good on her. You want to be using EM main stats. Most of the time you're going to be using a crit damage circlet because Night of the Skies Unveiling 4-piece set bonus gives 30% crit rate. You can use an EM circlet if you want, if you have like a really good one that has, you know, good substats. And also, don't underestimate EM substats. The only good substats on her are crit rate, crit damage, and EM. EM is really no slouch. It is barely behind crit, especially early on. EM is really good on her. So if you get a piece that is crit rate, crit damage, EM, and then it rolls, you know, maybe 2-3 times in EM, I wouldn't sweat it. I think it's still going to be a really good piece. Now her weapons. So this chart comes from Meowtoo's. All the credit goes to them. So obviously her sig is her best in slot, and shortly followed by that is Llama's signature. Then here's the Dawning Frost at R5. This is the gotcha weapon. There's some 5-star stat sticks, Black Marrow Lantern, which is the Nodcry craftable. This is definitely going to be your most consistent, best option. Everyone has access to this. Everyone can get this. No gotcha involved. And another good option that on average is a little bit worse is the Widsith. However, when the Widsith hits the EM buff, it actually performs similarly, like almost the same, if not better, than her signature. Because the Widsith R5 buff gives you 480 EM, which is ridiculous. You're able to hit that, let's say you're resetting for Stygian or something. If you just keep resetting until you hit the Widsith buff, you're basically cheating out free damage, like free signature levels of damage, at least for that rotation. So Widsith is definitely something to consider if you're struggling to clear something. Now for her teams, she needs an off-field Hydro and Dendro. That is basically something you always need to have because you need a consistent generation of Lunar Bloom in order to keep generating Verdant Dew. As long as you keep generating Verdant Dew, you can keep doing charge attacks. As soon as you run out of Verdant Dew, Nefer is no longer doing damage. Llama is just by far her best support. She's insane. Columbina is really good quality of life. While not the best damage upgrade for Nefer, she allows the Verdant Dews to overflow. They're called Moonridge Dews. They're just the same as Verdant Dews. So instead of having 3 stacks of Verdant Dew max, you can have 6 stacks of Verdant Dew. And this is actually really nice because you'll just never ever run out of Verdant Dew. It also allows you to hold E on Llama for more quills. Sucrose is a very good buffing option if you put her on Instructor and something like Sackfrag to just boost her EM share capabilities. She can provide an EM buff to the whole team, and it is just really strong to have. And some other characters to know will be characters, you know, like Aino, Nahida, Baiju, Kokomi, Singcho, Farina, like all these characters, off-field Dendros, off-field Hydros. You can all make them work, but they aren't necessarily very synergistic with Nefer, other than like Nahida and Aino, and Yehoda as well. Now, most sustain options can sacrifice her damage quite a bit, so these will be options like Nefer or Baiju. These are kind of your only good real sustain options, and none of them are too inherently synergistic with Nefer, which means her damage starts to fall off quite a bit. You can use Prototype Amber on Columbina, which is actually one of the best weapons you can use as a free-to-play since Prototype Amber is craftable, but the healing really isn't that great on Prototype Amber. It's good enough, I would say, at least in my experience, but there are definitely going to be times where you struggle to stay alive off of only Prototype Amber. Now for support sets, the big three are Silken Moon Serenade, Deepwood, and Instructor. So this is Noodle from the future. I'm re-uploading this, revisiting this guide for the third time, which is super embarrassing, but I hate spreading misinformation, so I have to correct what I got wrong. And so what I said in the last video was that Deepwood was a kind of fake set because Dendro Red Shred doesn't work for Lunar Bloom. What is actually the correct statement is Dendro damage percent doesn't work for Lunar Bloom. Dendro Red Shred does work. Another thing is also Lauma already has 25% Red Shred, and while Deepwood does stack, stacking Red Shred is a very ineffective form of damage gain, and it depends on the enemy, but it can hit diminishing returns really quickly. You can stack 2-piece EM on Lauma and not use Deepwood and get similar results, just because the increase to her buffs sort of cancel out the loss of the Red Shred from Deepwood. I was incorrect about this. I was spreading misinformation. Sorry about that. So I just had to come in and clear it up. And now back to the rest of the video. And for Instructor, just keep in mind that the Instructor holder needs to actually trigger reactions. So you can't put Instructor on someone like Nahida, for example. While you might be able to trigger it in like the first rotation, the second you put Nahida's skill on an enemy, the enemy basically has a permanent Dendro aura, and then at that point, Nahida is not triggering reactions anymore. The only people triggering reactions is like, you know, Columbina or Aino. So Nefer does have some weird Verdundu generation issues. My last video explains most of it, so I'm not gonna really go into it here. In this video, I also talk about some weird quirks that you might experience with your charge attacks and stuff like that. Mostly subjective, but if you want to know about that, you can check out my last video. And to end off the vid, I'm gonna answer some questions that were left in the comment section of my last video. They say, new player here. Never pulled for anyone. Should I invest for Zabai or Nefer? I personally would recommend investing in a Zabai team. I don't know when Zabai is rerunning. I think as a brand new player, it's probably best to strive for the current best team. You don't always have to do that. I think it's generally a good thing to do, but if you don't really care about meta and stuff like that, then you can obviously just pull for a Nefer team if you just really like how Nefer look. But yeah, I still would probably recommend a Zabai team because Nefer, you know, her future prospects maybe aren't looking so great. We really don't know, but it's possible that, you know, she might not be that great in the near future. And so the next comment says, returning player, I have Llama. I'm gonna pull for Columbina when she reruns. Should I go for Nefer or Nefer plus Sig, or skip Nefer and wait for Snezhnaya meta? I personally believe that you should probably wait for the Snezhnaya meta, but obviously, you know, just pulling for what's currently meta is not everyone's goal in the game. Sometimes people just, you know, really want a character right now, you know, but you already have Llama. You are planning to pull for Columbina when she reruns. And so Nefer really is going to make that team very cohesive. It's going to feel really good to play. There's also, you know, something you can do. You can just only get Nefer Sig and not Nefer, and then use her Sig on Columbina and then play Columbina DPS. So that's an option if you want to do that. But yeah, since you already have Llama and you're going to pull for Columbina, I would say Nefer is definitely a very solid pick. Waiting for Snezhnaya meta is obviously a very good option as well. Next comment says, I only got Flynn's as a new player and I was planning on getting both Llama and Nefer. But after seeing this, should I still get both? I was planning on getting Columbina on a rerun too. Now, you said here that you like Llama and also that you think she's very versatile. And since, again, similar to the last comment, since you're planning on getting all 3 of them, I don't see the issue, other than, you know, like, Snezhnaya meta concerns. The Nefer Llama Columbina core is, I'm pretty sure it's like the 2nd best team in the game right now. And now, even though Zabai is like really far ahead, it's not like this team is bad or anything. So it's still the 2nd in the entire game. So, but since you already have Flynn's, it could be good. It could be an option to skip both of them and then just wait for Columbina and maybe wait for Anefa. Anefa just recently had a rerun, so it might be a really long time till Anefa comes back around. So I'm not too sure about that. And like I said earlier, some people just want their characters like right now. They don't really want to wait. And I think that's pretty valid, because if that keeps you interested in the game, then might as well just stay interested. So TLDR, I think if you're planning to get all 3 of them, I don't see the issue. But you could also consider just only getting Columbina and then waiting for Anefa, and then you'll have a pretty strong Flynn's team later on. But, you know, maybe at that point, Snezhnaya meta has completely taken over and Flynn's isn't really as strong anymore, but it's all speculation. So, and this was a really good comment, I thought, which is, how about her brute forcing capabilities? I really like this question because I feel like there are definitely characters that are better at brute forcing than others. I think Nefer is one of those characters that actually isn't that great at brute forcing. I feel like Nefer, most enemies that like aren't shilled in her favor, so, you know, all the lunar enemies and stuff, any enemy that she has a good matchup against, I feel is going to be a good matchup for almost any other team. And I think Nefer can have some pretty bad matchups, specifically into, like I said earlier, enemies with innate auras she can struggle into because she might have trouble triggering her reactions, triggering Lunar Bloom, and if you have trouble triggering Lunar Bloom, then you just lose all your damage. Now, this is something that's also a little bit more niche, but there are not a lot, but there are some enemies that phase in and out of existence. They teleport around. Specifically, Hera does this, the Dendro, you know, purple dog does this, where they sort of phase out of existence. And sometimes what can happen is they'll do a charge attack and then they'll phase out of existence. And because how Nefer's charge attack works, where it does the 3 instances of damage like later, sometimes your whole charge attack just misses, or you only hit the first part of it, or maybe sometimes you only hit the last part of it. It isn't that big of an issue and it's kind of niche, but it is also something that sort of hinders some of her brute forcing capabilities. And yeah, that's going to be it for my quick overview on Nefer. I hope anyone who is pulling for her, I wish you good luck. Please let me know if you liked this sort of like PowerPoint presentation format. I just kind of feel like trying something new, throwing stuff at the wall, see what sticks. Yeah, I will see you guys around. Bye bye.